I'm going to share 5 beginner tips for someone who's interested in wearing corsets, has no idea where to start, or just wants some info on them. We'll focus on corset research, corset sizing, corset seasoning, corset goals in progress, and corset naysayers. Number 1, research. Like with any new thing, it's important to do your own research. Yeah, you can watch a bunch of videos from people who have experience in said new thing and get their perspective on it, but be sure to find the pros and cons. And yes, there are cons to corsets, such as backlash from others or not properly sizing yourself and getting an ill-fitting corset. But in my opinion, the pros outweigh the cons, so I stay corset training. I'll link some articles and videos in the description box for you to take a look at, which may help your decision. But overall, I think it is extremely important to do your own research. And by own research, I mean look for other or different articles and videos from what I share. Google corset pros and cons. Read about the myths or societal viewpoints on corsets and why that is. Read other countries' perspectives on corsets. Everyone has different viewpoints on things, so get as many perspectives as you can about corsets before moving forward with corset training. Number 2, corset sizing is pretty easy. There's 4 main measurements we need to find. Well, there's actually a lot more, but let's stick with the basics for now. And keep in mind, this is for an OTK or off-the-rack corset. Custom corsets have way more intricate measurements, but this video is solely focusing on the beginner basics. Okay, so number 1 is the corset size. Measure your waist in inches. I suggest 30 minutes to 1 hour after UV in. That'll give you a more accurate number than measuring yourself like right after you wake up. When you haven't eaten for a while, we all know how snatched our bodies look in the morning. But throughout the day, they expand, so that's why I recommend measuring after eating. So corsets are usually 4 to 6 inches smaller than your natural waist. I say measure in inches because most corset companies I know use inches with regards to their corset size, and even numbers as opposed to odd numbers. So take your waist size and subtract 4 to 6. So if your waist is 30 inches, 30 minus 4 is 26, therefore your corset size is 26 inches. Or if you subtract 6, 30 minus 6 is 24, so your corset size will be 24 inches. So you can either choose a size 24-inch corset or a 26-inch corset, depending on how squishy your torso is, aka how much fat you have on it or how small of a waist reduction you want. If you're in between corset sizes, like you do the math and you end up being like size 25-inch corset, it's up to you and your other measurements, which we'll figure out in a bit, that determine whether you should size up or size down. Also, most corset companies have pretty good customer service, so you can always contact them. And I highly recommend looking into Lucy's Corsetry website because she has a free calculator that helps you find your corset size. Okay, rib spring size. It's important to also find your rib spring size so your corset doesn't feel too tight around your rib cage and so you don't get any or a lot of spillover, like around the bra. Rib springs are your underbust size and you measure this with your bra strap. So to find your rib spring, take your underbust size minus your corset size. So my underbust is about a 35.5, but let's round up to 36. And my corset size is a 26. So 36 minus 26 is 10. My rib spring is 10 inches. Okay, now let's do hip spring size. So your hip bone, measure the upper hip bone because that's what the corset companies usually go by. So right above my hip, it's 38 inches, give or take if I've eaten or having snatched tummy that day. So 38 minus 26, my corset size, equals 12. So my hip spring is 12 inches. Some corset companies also give a lower hip measurement, and this is usually right above your hip flexor or about 2 to 4 inches below your belly button. Okay, lastly, torso length. Everyone has different torso lengths, but corset companies usually go by short torso, average torso, and long line torso. So measure your torso starting from your underbust to your hip bone, either upper hip or lower hip, depending how much coverage you want. Let's take me for example. So from my underbust to my upper hip, it's about 9 inches, but from my underbust to my lower hip, it's about 11 inches. Personally, I like a shorter corset because I sit down majority of the day and I want to still have some flexibility and not be too restrained. However, a longer corset will of course give better tummy control. You can even measure your torso length while sitting down to see if those measurements differ if you tend to sit for the majority of the day like I do. Seated from underbust to upper hip, 8 inches, and seated from underbust to lower hip, 10 inches. When making a corset selection, be sure to check the corset front length to see if it corresponds to your torso length. Number 3, take it nice and slow. Corset seasoning is extremely important because it gives the steel boning time to mold and conform to your body, so it's not poking you later when you start tightening up your corset. There are many seasoning schedules, but I usually do about 2 to 4 hours per day for about 2 weeks. I'll gradually tighten my corset for the entire 2 weeks, starting with it about 1/2 inch to 1 inch closed. You may notice that the top and bottom of the corset isn't completely touching your body because it's not tightened, it's just lightly hugging your torso. Number 4, set and track your progress. Sometimes when we start new adventures, we don't take the time to track our progress and then we don't see how far we've come. So we give up too early. So track your progress by measuring and writing it down or taking photos and videos. If it weren't for my daily journals that track my progress, I would have never known how far I've come with my corsets. Sometimes I even forget, but my subscribers don't. You guys have such great memories. Anyways, please track your progress, choose a method, and stick to it. Number 5, don't listen to the naysayers. I get so much backlash from people on the internet talking about things they've never tried or haven't researched and just talk out of their you-know-what. I don't blame them. Our society is so critical of every little thing creators and influencers do. They seem to forget that they're also human beings who feel things, make mistakes, and are doing the best at this so-called life. A lot of the times, people will speak out of fear or ignorance, not understanding fully what it is they're seeing or hearing. You're not obligated to explain what you do to anyone, including wearing corsets. But you can always give the naysayers articles to read and videos to watch that debunk their hate speech for corsets. Or you can just ignore them, thank them for acknowledging your presence, and feeling the need to comment on your look. You can also stealth your corset or hide it under your clothes so you don't go through all this. Up to you. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, drop your comments below. And if you want help figuring things out or just want to chat, subscribe to my Patreon. Bye.